Hey, how you doing? I hope you're well. I'm Deanna and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to run through all the books that I read in the month of May. Now, having a look at the Bookish Stats, May was one of my slower reading months, but in saying that, the books I read were fantastic. So I read 11 books in May for a total of 4,061 pages. And as I said, this was a very stellar reading month. Average star rating was 4.6, which is bananas. I didn't give a single book lower than 4 stars, which is an absolute win in my eyes. So 5 books got 5 stars, 3 books got 3.5 stars, and 3 books got 4 stars. For a genre breakdown, we are not very adventurous at all this month. So in May, I was dedicating the month to reading and catching up on my ARC copies, and a lot of the ARCs that I've been getting fall within one of these 3 genres. So split down the middle, I read 5 paranormal and 5 fantasy romance, and 1 romance book. Having a look at formats next, I am absolutely thrilled with this one. As I mentioned, my goal was to read through as many review copies as I could. So review arcs are my biggest format. All of them were digital arcs. So I read 7 review copies, listened to 3 audiobooks, and read 1 ebook. Having a look at the series versus standalone stats, I read 0 standalones. So we were very series focused this month. And unfortunately, we did read and start more series than we read sequels. The nature of reading review copies, a lot of them are for the first book in the series. I read 6 first books and read 5 sequels. So maybe I will have to catch up and do another month where I read only sequels. It's not going to happen for a couple of months because I'm currently doing the Summer of Romantasy-a-thon, which actually, now I'm thinking about my TBR, I might be starting a ton more series. So yes, we're probably gonna have to do 2 months of reading only sequels. Yes, that is the breakdown of the stats. So let's move into the books. The first books I read this month was actually an entire series, and it was The Mate Games Death by Kay Lorraine and Meg Ann, which includes Haunting Beauty, Hunted Beast, Hateful Prince, and Heartless Villain. So I was very kindly enough given a review copy of the final book, Heartless Villain, just like I was given for the rest of the series. And I couldn't help myself. I love this series, I love this world, I love these characters, so I decided to treat myself and reread the first 3 books in the series before diving into Heartless Villain. You all know how much I love Kay Lorraine and Meg Ann. This whole series has used itself to become part of my very DNA, and I think this particular series is my absolute favorite. So in The Mate Games Death, we are following Dahlia, who is a child survivor of a death cult turned erotic romance author, and she fully embodies the I don't like people, introverted, I would like to be a hermit trait. And her books blow up. Think like Hunger Games, Twilight style blow up, and she's been granted a movie deal. So she does have to leave the safe comfort of her own home to go to the movie premiere, which her best friend and editor Kiki drags her along to. She doesn't really want to be there, but she's getting through the red carpet until things go sideways when she sees the ghost of her dead father and ex-cult leader. People starts dying and she starts screaming and has a complete mental breakdown. In the aftermath, she is sent to a hospital where a doctor suggests that she heads up to the Highlands to this Blackwood estate, which is turned a wellness retreat to rest and rejuvenate and recover from this burnout. Since the media and the publisher are breathing down her throat, Kiki and Dahlia decided it is a great idea to escape to the Scottish Highlands. However, once Dahlia gets to Blackwood, she realizes that it might not be the bougie wellness retreat it had been pitched to her as, but it is in fact an asylum for dangerous supernatural creatures, of which Dahlia might be one. And on top of that, she has group therapy sessions with none other than a cursed Novus Guardian demigod named Tor, a dragon shifter tattoo artist named Kai, a very flirty Caspian Hook, who is the one and only Captain Hook, and a mysterious southern gentleman who has no memory of who he was before he woke up here at Blackwood, but he does have a very cute, adorable dog named Asshole. And I just love these characters' dynamics. Dahlia is a virgin heroine, but given the fact that she is a romance author, she has no shame or qualms, for lack of a better word, about sex. The steamy scenes in here are fantastic, and as the guys decide to get along and realize that if they want Dahlia and she wants to date them all, they've got to kind of figure out a way to get to know each other and get along, and they do put down their alpha posturing to protect her. So yes, this is a why choose. The ending was just, I still like, my heart freezes when I think about it. There was just so many points where my heart was literally in my throat, and there was so many twists, so many turns. There was so much stuff happening. I was worried about all our characters, and it was just a fantastic conclusion. And we did get a little teaser for the next series, which is the Make Games Apocalypse, which unfortunately I do have to wait till 2025 to read, but I think it'll be worth it. And in the meantime, I'll probably re-listen to this and the Make Games War and Pestilence. I would recommend that if you pick up this series, please pick it up on audio. The production that Taylor Rain and Megan have put into these audiobooks is next level insane. We have a full cast. Like, I mean, every character is given their own narrator, and even if it isn't in their point of view, that narrator will narrate the dialogue, and it's just this full immersive experience with this one in particular as well. I loved the production value and the changes to the audio they made. So we have this group therapy session, and their doctor is recording the tapes, and you can tell just by listening which is the recordings of the sessions, as the audio is distorted as if it's going through a old school tape recorder, and it's just perfection. So yes, highly recommend picking up the Make Games Death. For a change of a pace, next I picked up Midnight Salvation by Penelope Black. This is a small town why choose MC romance, and it is the conclusion of the Rosewood series. I had been waiting to pick this up because Shadowed Obsessions ends on this massive cliffhanger, which I had literally no idea what was going to happen to our girl Evie, and I just needed to know. Can't tell you too much about this particular book. It follows Evangeline Carter, who's returning to Rosewood, which was where her grandmother lived, and really it is her safe place. Now, she has just been fired from her dream design job, which turns out wasn't what she wanted anyway, and is back in town for the reading of the will. Things go a bit awry when, to her mother and sister's absolute dismay, her grandmother has left her as the sole owner of her house. She decides to spend the summer in Rosewood with her cousin and best friend to figure out what her next steps are. What she wasn't expecting was to catch the eyes of the most eligible bachelors in Rosewood, who are the St. James men, who are the leaders of the Rosewood Reaper motorcycle gang. Now, this is a reformed motorcycle gang. They got out because their president, Elias, had just had a son, and they have needed to kind of break the cycle of all the kind of gang wars, turf wars, and the danger. So they still offer protection to Rosewood, but they're just not involved in the shadier side of the MC world. Evangeline becomes the nanny to Solias's son as his mother is going in for reconstructive shoulder surgery. And I'm not normally for one for kids in books, but this kid is pretty cute, and I did enjoy it. We have some twists and turns to do with the St. James men and their family history. One thing I really enjoyed about the events that happen in the final book is that Evie really needs saving, but she does a lot to save herself. Quite literally, she is alone, and while she could just lay down and let things happen to her, she fights tooth and nail to get back home. Solias, Bane, and Nova are beside themselves and are doing everything they can, everything within their power, digging up old connections to try and find her, but she literally does everything she can to meet them halfway, and it was beautiful. The romance in this final book really does take a backseat as the plot just takes over, and there are twists and reveals just come out at us left, right, and center. And I did wish in terms of that one we did get a little bit more romance, especially in the development with her and Solias, as they'd finally been kind of will they, won't they for the most of this series. But yes, this is a lot of fun. I didn't think Small Town and Why I Choose and MC would go together, but Penelope Black has proved me wrong. Speaking of cliffhangers that left me completely distraught beside myself and in an absolute state of shock, the next book I picked up was my latest review copy from the wonderful Devon Sinclair, which is Beautiful Beasts. This is the first book in her Dragons of Vieira series, and I can already tell that this is going to emotionally scar me. If I had the option, I would much prefer to have waited till all books were out, but I'm now just going to have to sit with that cliffhanger hangover and wait to see what happens to Lena and her guys. So this one is a fantasy romance with dragon shifters. So Lena is the princess of a human kingdom called Galeria, and she is arranged to marry the Crown Prince Andros of Cariso. Apologies if I've said any of these names incorrectly. And this marriage is supposed to unite these two human kingdoms. Their world is dying. There's a drought spreading across this land, and they really need to band together to share resources and save their people. I really love Lena. She knows that being a daughter and a crown princess, that she's essentially always going to be someone's pawn, whether it's her father or her future husband, but she does whatever she can to claw back her power, including using the magic and knowledge that her grandmother taught her to be a skilled potion maker, and she takes back control of her body and of her life, which I just thought was a really interesting take. I haven't seen that in like a fantasy setting before. And she is dreading her wedding day, but goes through the whole ceremony of it. Just as she's walking down the aisle, 3 dragons appear and light up the sky with fire. She steals herself to be burnt alive and destroyed by one of the dragons. However, with one look into his eyes, she is instead captured and taken away to their lands. And we get this understanding that what the dragons think of humans and what Lena thinks of the dragons isn't actually true. Both sides have been manipulated and fed into this propaganda to keep this war between the dragons and the humans going. She's absolutely fascinated with dragon culture and their customs. For the dragons, being a woman isn't necessarily a detriment. You aren't property, you aren't to be owned. So I think she finds that quite fascinating. And she knows that she's pretty much on borrowed time, which is why she's getting to see the inner workings of the dragon courts and customs, because they were ordered by their elders to kill her. And we have our 3 dragons, so Andre, Zovi, and Sirius, and they are the heirs to the dragon throne. However, their parents really are just power hungry and are doing everything they can to maintain control, including marking one of them as a traitor and constricting his powers. So they're already in the bad books with their elders after this decision they made 3 centuries past. So they know that they really need to get rid of Lena, but they can't. Their dragons refuse to harm her. And yeah, I just love that these dragons have magical abilities. Andre, despite his restrictions on his power, he does have the ability to cast illusions and can manipulate and influence people. And then Sirius can control and harness the wind. And when they're not in their dragon form, they have like scales that match the colors of their dragons, and I'm just completely fascinated. This is another why I choose. In this world, it is not uncommon for one woman to have multiple dragon mates, so that was great. It is really much a medium burn in the romance, because they do go from I need to kill you to okay, you might not be as bad as we think you are, to being cautiously optimistic and then getting together. We do get like a couple of steamy scenes before that ending just rips everything apart. I will say my absolute favorite part of this book is that we have a beautiful little dragon called Vari. He would be the size of a kitten, and he is fiercely protective of Lena. Lena saves him before her wedding, and he has a dragon hoard which consists of 1 gold coin, and I am completely besotted. I need Vari in my life. And my favorite thing about it is that Lena's handmaiden makes him a little backpack so he can carry his coin instead of having to like carry it in his mouth and or, hold it in his little paws. And I just can't wait to see more of him and the rest of the characters. Honestly, I don't know how there's going to be a book 2 that doesn't end with a funeral, but we'll see. I'm sure Devon has some tricks up her sleeves. Keeping on the fantasy romance train, next I picked up The Musician and the Monster by Megan Van Dyke. This was another review copy. In fact, most of them so far have been review copies. And this is the Beauty and the Beast meets Phantom of the Opera retelling in her fairy tale retelling series. And this was just beautiful. It had all the whimsy and magic that I want from a fairy tale retelling, and then with the added elements of having this Phantom of the Opera flavor, we do have this kind of lush, gothic, atmospheric vibe. And I think she did a fantastic job of, even though We know this is a fairy tale retelling. She did everything she could so that Drisden and Ceridwen's world felt real. So Ceridwen is a musician. That's all she wants to be, is to be a musician. The flute is her instrument of choice. She was a singer as well, but after the death of her mother, she refuses to sing. And each night she goes outside onto the roof of her family's house and plays a requiem to her mother. And her family, after the death of the mother, the dad was a bit distraught, made some poor business choices. So they are living paycheck to paycheck. They've lost their fancy estate and they've moved to this tiny backwater city at the very top of this kingdom and are doing everything they can to survive. Family is super important to Ceridwen, but music is just equally as important. When she's offered by the new Lord Protector, Drisden Winterborn, to become his personal musician. Her family's a bit sus about it at first, just given the fact that she has to go to the manor by herself, can ask no questions, and he's going to pay her handsomely. So there's this worry about her safety and possibly her reputation. But if it's going to keep her family alive and she's going to get to play music, Ceridwen absolutely jumps at the chance. And then we've got Drisden, who is our broody, tortured hero. He has been banished to this backwater city on orders of the king, which actually works out pretty well for him because he needs to reenact his revenge plan and finish forging this weapon which will take down the men who killed his family and destroyed his life. In this world, we've got two kind of forms of magic which have been gifted by the goddess. We've got the light and the dark magic. Bleeding into the dark magic has monstrous, may I say, beastly consequences. So Tristan needs to use both light and dark magic to finish forging this weapon, and he finds that the only thing that keeps him from falling fully into darkness is Ceridwen's music. The magic system in this world is fascinating, and I really would like to see if same magic system is woven throughout the earlier books in this series, or if they are purely standalone fantasy fairy tale retelling. And yeah, I just completely adored this. It is very character driven at times and can be quite slow just in terms of the pacing if you're used to like a faster paced fantasy romance. But yeah, I completely loved it. Loved watching these characters get to learn about each other, slowly fall for each other, and also help each other heal from their own grief while working together to reenact Drisden's revenge plan. And it was a beautiful fairy tale retelling, so I would highly recommend. Then I picked up Songbirds of the Sorrows by Brady Otto, and this is a debut fantasy romance by an Australian author. So tick, 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 I had to pick this up. And when I saw it floating around on Instagram when it was first announced, we have Greek myth, we have got spies, we have got like seasonal fae courts, and everything in it just made me be like, yes, I need this in my life. So in this book, we are following Ayala, who has just completed her training and naming ceremony to be part of the ranks of the Avery, who are the spy network that the King of the Sorrows uses to keep track of what's going on across this world. And her life turns upside down when she is assigned her first mission with the Alpha Flight crew, so one of the most important crews in this spy network. Now, Ayala is the hidden and secret princess of the Sorrows, and she was given away to the Avery as a young child, and she has been taught to keep her identity a secret. She has been given a glamour so she doesn't even look like the Princess of Sorrows. There is a decoy woman running around pretending to be her. So imagine Ayala's surprise when she is assigned up for this mission and she needs to go as the Princess of the Sorrows to the Autumn Court to take part in the royal trials to win the hand of the Autumn Prince. And the spy master has let her know that losing is not an option. In fact, she needs to win the trials and then remain in the Autumn Court to keep an eye on the Autumn Royals, because her partaking in these trials is going to be the perfect distraction that they need to search for this weapon that the Autumn Court supposedly have. And this weapon is supposed to be dangerous enough to give the Autumn Court the power to take over this world. I love the character development that Ayala goes through. So I think she has this kind of perception and this arrogance that, you know, she's made it. She's a songbird now of the Avery. She's passed her training, and that all this training has empowered her and she is powerful. However, we see very quickly that she's nothing but a pawn to her father, to the Prince of the Autumn Court, to the spy master. The songbirds are supposed to be blindly loyal and follow any order, do not question, do not answer back, and continue on with the mission even if you might not think it is the right thing to do. So we're seeing her try to fuse together her life as this royal princess and as a songbird and figure out that maybe she doesn't want to just blindly follow orders, and the risk of losing her humanity or her morals. And some of the things that she has to go through in this book is absolutely harrowing. So I do hope we get a chance for her to heal and figure out her next steps in the next books before she has to, you know, take on the world, which I'm assuming she's going to have to. And I'd like to know a little bit more about this world. There's this weaving of Greek myth, which I absolutely love. So there was a god war, and these 4 minor gods end up escaping to create this world, and I believe they're the season, from what I can remember. And we find out that they'd created these different beings, and everyone here is a Taisheroi. Sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly. The world is like fully infused with Greek myth, that the words and the places are based on, you know, Greek words. So probably said that very wrong. And they are the common race of this world, and they're basically superhuman. So they don't have magical abilities or anything, but they live longer, they're stronger, they're faster, they've got better senses and things like that. But we're kind of getting some sprinkling that Ayala might be more than that. And the romance in here is interesting. It's very slow burn, and it is with Raven, who is the kind of dreamy commander of the flight. And you get the vibe that they've had a thing for each other for a long time, but due to his staunch loyalty to the Avery and her wanting to protect people, because in the past people have been weaponized against her to try and keep her in line, they kind of avoid each other. Now, I don't know, he's giving me kind of Tamlin vibes. Like, he's saying all the right things, like she's his world and he would die for her, but through his actions we see that he is 100% loyal to the Avery. The Avery and the mission will always come first despite his flowery words, and we've even seen it. So yeah, I don't think he's totally endgame, but it'll be interesting to see this play out. This is a completely fantastic fantasy romance debut. Again, I'm completely obsessed with the Greek myth inspired world. I cannot wait to see more of it as we expand through the rest of the series. The political intrigue is slowly building, and the wool has been pulled from Ayala's eyes, and she's realizing that things might not be exactly as she was taught. And yeah, I cannot wait for the next book. If you're a big fan of any kind of slow burn fantasy romance with all that political machinations like The Serpent and the Wings of Night, highly recommend you pick this one up. This will be available in Kindle Unlimited as of the 18th of June, but pre-orders are up now, so highly recommend you snapping up a copy of Songbird of Sorrows. And then I listened to The North Wind by Alexandra Warwick. This actually, fun fact, I had pre-ordered a copy of this book when it was indie published a couple of years ago. It has now been picked up by Simon & Schuster and traditionally published. And I will say big thank you to Simon & Schuster for sending a review copy my way. As you can tell, I completely loved and adored this one so much that I bought a copy. I cannot be stopped. So this is the first book in the Four Winds series and is a beautiful, atmospheric Beauty and the Beast meets Hades and Persephone retelling. Now, if you enjoyed the atmosphere and the Frost King in Catherine Arden's The Winter Night trilogy, but wished it would have been, you know, for an adult market and the romance had been more to the forefront, and you love a kind of Hades and Persephone vibe to your romance, I think this is the perfect book for you. In this world, we are following Ren, who is wholly a protector. Her parents have died, and they have really instilled the fact that they need to protect her sister, Alora, because she is the good and pure, and she kind of gives me Elaine from ACOTAR vibes, like kind of a bit useless and will let Ren risk her life so that she doesn't have to lift a finger kind of vibe. So I'm not sure how I feel about her. But Ren has risked her life to save her against these dark walkers who are kind of mutated zombie shade type things, and she's now scarred. To protect this town from the dark walkers, there is a magical barrier that has been put up. However, it has been put up by the North Wind, who is a god and rules over winter. So this town has been set up into an endless winter, especially for the last 100 years or so. And then every so often, the North Wind, Boraris, will come to town to claim his bride. Now, everyone thinks it's kind of like a human sacrifice. He needs their blood to keep the magical barrier strengthened. And unfortunately for Ren, Boraris has his eyes on Alora, and she is going to do everything she can to make sure that she is the one who is sacrificed. So she tricks the North Wind and she tricks her sister. However, to her surprise, she's not like once they cross the border to the Deadlands. And in fact, she is married off to the Northwind because being married to a god strengthens the blood, which will then in turn strengthen the shade. And I just completely adored this. Ren is now in the Deadlands. Bararas kind of leaves her to her own devices. He is as cold as the winter and frosty as you would think a winter god would be. And she has to now figure out who she is outside of this protector role. Now, trigger warnings for alcoholism in here. Ren, I think, having to deal with the grief of losing her parents, has turned to booze to make life livable. And I think it was beautifully handled, her addiction and also her recovery as well. So that was wonderful. In this world, she's trying to find a way out of the Deadlands, and there's these doors in the castle that are to lead to other places and other realms. However, she's trying to find the door back to her sister. She realizes that as she goes through them, she's essentially just a ghost. No one can see her, but you know, she's able to figure out which door she likes, figures out what things she likes, and it's beautiful watching her have this space and chance to heal and figure out who she is. And then we have Bararas, who will tell you at multiple times that he is a god. And I kind of love his no-nonsense, matter-of-fact nature. He is seen as very cold. He is the Death Lord. You know, he rules winter. He is the one who is deciding the fates of the souls in this universe. And we get this feeling that at the start, Ren thinks he's an arrogant piece of shit, basically, and who is he to judge someone from a decision that they make? But we learn that, you know, he's created these doors and he loves reading because he's trying to understand people. And he admits that maybe he made some wrong decisions in the past, but is wanting to understand humans and understand why they make their decisions and what drives them so he can assign them to the best afterlife. And I love that Ren pulls him out of his shell and forces him to go to events that these souls are putting together. She, in fact, cleans up the castle, invites them all in, and he doesn't know how to interact with people, and it's just beautiful. And yes, very much an enemies to lovers romance. At the start, she's planning on killing the North Wind. She actually makes a deal with his brother, the West Wind, Seraphis, to find out a way to kill him because she wants to lift the endless winter, and so does he. And she's determined that he is the bad guy. He's kind of like, well, I can't change your mind, and it's not my responsibility to do so. But they slowly, through each other's actions, fall for each other, and this ending is just so beautiful. I, in fact, probably will reread this one before going into the sequel because it is Seraphis's book, and that's going to be so interesting because he's the villain in this one. So I can't wait to read that one. It'll be out later this year to figure out if he can be redeemable as a romantic hero in my mind. But yes, highly recommend The North Wind. And then for the last of my review copies, I picked up A Rivalry of Hearts by Tessania Odette, which is the first book in her new series, Fae Flings and Corset Strings, and I was so thrilled that I was picked to be sent a review copy because this just sounded perfect, and I can confirm that it did live up to that hype, and it is pure perfection. So if you love the kind of cozy fantasy worlds, think like your Howl's Moving Castle or the Regency Fairy Tale series by Olivia Atwater, but wanted to have a bit more steam, this is the one for you. It is your Fae romance, but set in a Regency setting, and I am completely besotted. In this, we are following Edwina, who is a romance author who has been struggling in her town to get people to publish her books and sell her books. So when she's given the opportunity of a lifetime to head to Theraver, which is the only Fae inhabited portion of this world, she jumps at the chance. And she is this beautifully chaotic, creative person that I purely aspire to be. And through a series of unfortunate events and bad luck, she ends up late to Theraver and to her book tour. So when she gets there, she is a bit disheartened to find out that her publisher has decided to, in her absence, let's not waste good planning and the book tour, and they have included an arrogant Fae poet named William Haywood. To make matters worse, she finds out that she not only is a week late to her book tour, but the person who sells the most books in the tour is the one who's going to end up with the killer publishing deal. So she is very much stressed about that. And they have a instant dislike for each other. She rocks up to the event late. He assumes she's a fan, and unfortunately, before he thinks she's here to see him and is ready to sign a book and give, a sexy smirk, she did hear him refer to her books as smut and drivel, and she's already not a fan of this man. And I completely loved this. Edwina is very much a writer. You can see, in her perspective, her brain is going off in like different tangents as she sees someone, and she's thinking of their romance, and she's thinking of the steamy scenes that they can get involved with. And then William is very interesting. He is your typical fae, and we slowly get to see that there might be a little bit more to him underneath his poet exterior, and he is completely fascinated and besotted with Edwina. On a drunken night, the pair forge a bet that they will each get bonus points for as many intimate bedmates they can pick up along the way, which will mean whoever wins that bet will forfeit the publishing deal. And yeah, I could talk about this book forever. This world is amazing. The fact that we've got a book tour, Tessania has really captured all the joy and the excitement and the magic of a book tour, but literally stuck it in a magical world. And yes, she's also taken an interesting point on the fae. In this world, the fae have a seelie and unseelie form rather than being like two castes of fae. So the seelie form is the one like you see here, which is their kind of high fae form, which you'd see in other fantasy romance. So it's the one that looks most like a human, but they've got the pointed ears. And their unseelie form is the form that would be much like their magic. So it could be an elemental form, it could be a animal form, it could be a spirit form, and I kind of love that concept. And in this world, they can freely change between the two forms, but often they will have a preference as to which one they want to stay in. And we have our publishing intern Daphne, who prefers her unseelie form, so spends most of this book as she's like Pan from his Dark Materials series, kind of like adorable weasel creature. And yeah, I just completely love this. I just really want to pick it up right now and reread it. This one will be out on the 12th of June. I pre-ordered my copy, this beautiful hardback, so very glad that it's already arrived. But yes, you can still pre-order a copy now, and it'll be hitting Kindle Unlimited on the 12th of June, so highly recommend that you add this one to your TBR. And then last but not least, I picked up The Scent of Us Part 1 by Elena Lee. This just purely on a whim. I had seen this one on Instagram, and in fact, the third book in this series was just about to be released around the time I picked this one up, and I loved the idea of this world. So this is the first book in her The Bond Disillusion Omegaverse. So is it me if we don't have at least one Omegaverse read a month? There's a few reasons why I kind of love this. First off, it is set in Melbourne, Australia, which you all know I love that as a setting. In fact, Juno meets one of her scent-matched alphas, Ollie, at the Loom during the Van Gogh exhibit, and having been to the Loom and seen the Van Gogh exhibit, that brought me so much joy. I was giggling and screaming the entire time. And then we have a hugely diverse cast of characters. So our female character is Chinese Australian, and we have a number of diversity in the characters we see in this world, which I think was just a beautiful touch, and it's effortlessly included, which it should be. And in this world, we have a very interesting take on like the kind of fated mate or scent matched trope. So there's a beautiful discussion here about the fact that being scent matched might not necessarily mean you are completely compatible, which is especially seen through Juno and Everett's relationship. And there's this underlying fact that all relationships take work. Whether you are scent matched and you're supposed to be fated, doesn't matter. You still have to put effort into your relationship. You want it to survive. And even if you aren't scent matched, there's nothing to say that you can't have a beautifully caring relationship if you put that time and effort in, which I thought was wonderful. In this world, the National Omega Commission has announced that they have found a way to dissolve mate bond. And they have, at the start of this book, the commission has announced that they're expanding that to Omegas who are under domestic violence situations that have been bonded against their will, which is where Juno fits in perfectly. So the start of this book is quite harrowing and quite dark, so please keep that in mind. Juno has been sold off by her father to the Zhao pack, who run some illegal gambling rings. So to pay off his gambling debt, they sold Juno into this forced marriage and forced bonding. The pack don't really see her as anything but holes to fill and treat her horrifically. Thankfully, she is able to get an SOS out and escape, and she is now living her best life in Melbourne and is studying graphic design, and understandably is completely terrified of alphas. So when she finds Ollie at the loom and realizes that they are scent matched, and then she also, one of her professors in one of her elective classes is also a scent match, she's starting to freak out. Because she has repressed her Amiga in the wake of, the trauma that she faced, her heat is coming up. So the doctors and everyone at the commission where she's living have kind of recommended that maybe she reaches out and sees about finding one of these alphas. And it is completely night and day the way the Rivera Gunnison pack treat Juno. It has that kind of courtship that I love to see from like the sweet Amiga verses, and the pack each take her out on a date and get to know her. There's different dynamics in the pack, so at this point she and the prime alpha Julian really realize that they have feelings towards each other, but it's very much platonic, and that's okay. And he's not going to force her into any kind of sexual relationship. And then he is with Miles, who is the beta of their pack, and she is drawn to Miles, and they've got this understanding that they can both be with Miles, and that's no issues. And obviously we've got Ollie, who she's scent matched with, and Everett, who she's very interested in. Just, yes, the found family in here is impeccable. I love the hurt and comfort vibes. I will say this is part one of a duology. The ending, I don't know, maybe May was the month of cliffhanger endings. This is why I shouldn't start so many series, because what? Juno is finally in a good place, and then that happened. Anyway, I am praying to all the gods, the old and the new, that I am able to squeeze in part 2 onto my TBR for June. I'm taking part in the Amazing Readathon, so I'm hoping that it fits for one of the prompts, but completely love this. I am obsessed with the world that Ileana Lee has created, and I cannot wait to read this one and then read the third book, which follows her best friend, who is beautifully unashamed, confident, sex positive Omega who is a cam girl, and I can't wait to read her story because she is such a fun time and a real source of comfort for Juno. I love their kind of like opposites attract friendship. So yes, I cannot wait to continue on with this series. So there you have it. There are all the books that I read in May. I am super proud of myself for getting through as many review copies as I did, and I'm mostly up to date with actually writing and posting those reviews as well. So yay, go me. Yes, so if you'd like to see more content from me, please like and subscribe. I'll be posting new videos every Sunday. Linked in the description box below will be all the books and any reviews I have if you want to hear some more like cohesive thoughts rather than this rambling nonsense that I always go through. But just rest assured, I loved and adored every book that I read this month. Also linked in the description box below are links to my social media channels if you would like to follow or chat to me on any other corner of the internet. Comment down below and let me know what book was your favorite read of the month and why I need to add it to my TBR. Or if you don't want to, you can leave a pen emoji for a Rivalry of Hearts. Anyway, that is all from me today, guys. I hope you're doing all kinds of well, and I will speak to you soon. See ya!